So this is an article that came out in the LA Times last week. The reason I know about it is because the LA Times has been advertising this article to me, wanting me to subscribe to them. They gave me $1 for 6 months. I said, okay, for the sake of this one article, I'll spend the $1 and get 6 months of the LA Times. But this will be up your alley because it's talking about the we're a year after the strike, and where's the industry at? And I figured you were the best person to talk to this. But Company Town, we checked in with Hollywood writers a year after the strike. They're not okay.
From which Hollywood writers did they check in with?
we'll get there. From Chrissy Karras and Stacey Furman. For 14 years straight, Ted Sullivan was consistently paid to pen stories for the screen. The Hollywood-based 53-year-old television writer and producer's resumes boast credits on hit shows such as Riverdale and Star Trek Discovery. Hit shows like Star Trek Discovery. Okay, so now he spends 7 to 8 hours a day writing without pay, preparing for an unforeseen moment that Hollywood studios start greenlighting projects and hiring writers again. He misses the picket lines of the WA strikes, which to him were the best thing to working in the writer's room, surrounded and supported by colleagues. You know, you could hang out in front of the studios with your fellow writers friends and make it feel like the strike line.
Yes, you can.
He hasn't worked in a real writer's room since the strike began. I feel like I'm in the worst twilight zone ever, Sullivan said, where I wake up and I'm now 20 years older. Now I'm 20 years old again, writing spec scripts for free in my apartment. Does that resonate with you in terms of where you're at or where your friends are at?
That's always been that way. I'll put it to you this way. Everybody is always writing a spec script in their home for free because they're trying to get momentum. They're trying to use it as part of their catalog to land an open writing assignment or get a show. But I really like the fact that LA Times decided we're going to talk to a writer who worked on Star Trek Discovery and Riverdale. They're the problem. Those writers are the problem. And if they're the ones complaining, that is the best sign that Hollywood is on the mend, because those shows were terrible. The writing is horrific. A lot of the staff of that show were not writers that had skill, talent, understanding, pedigree, any of those things that make a show good. So if the LA Times is reaching out to those people and they're complaining, keep doing it, please, because this should be conveying to an astute audience that, oh, the writers of these terrible shows that are making things worse for everybody are not getting work. Isn't that like meritocracy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you're saying they've got to up their game.
They should have been. You always up your game. My first day, I was an intern, unpaid at Paramount. I got coffee. I had to check I had to literally check boxes that things were done and tasks were done in the studio lobby and whatnot. I was doing grunt work, but I was loving it because every time you'd be the new fresh voice. And so people would ask your opinion on stuff so they could gauge another perspective on the audience, and you had to deliver. And if you couldn't be insightful on that, if you couldn't show them that you were talented and good at what you're doing beyond just being an intern, you didn't make it anywhere. And that was the fun of it. It was basically saying, okay, kid, here's your shot. Show me what you got. And if you have to show them. But now we had a generation where it's not show me what you got. Is, oh, you look like this. Come on over. And now the people that look like this are being told, well, listen, you don't actually have any talent, and we can't fire you, but we're not going to renew your contract, and you're not going to be getting meetings because we're going to be looking for people that can make us money. And since you can't make us money, why would we hire you? And I think that's the fantastic sign. So yes, you can say, oh, cry, the Hollywood writers. It's like, no, the people that are crying are not Hollywood writers. They're writers. They're people who pretended to be Hollywood writers, and they fooled a lot of people, and now they're being exposed. And keep exposing, please.
Well, yeah, and when you had 600 projects going on, there were a lot of writers who were there. Let me see. I am a subscriber. Okay. Sorry, it's giving me all these subscriber things. Okay. A year after the Writers Guild of America members walked out in pursuit of higher wages, enhanced streaming residuals, and limitations on the use of AI, the Times checked in with multiple writers of varying experience. Some declined to be named to avoid risking future employment. Smart move. All said that they and their colleagues have struggled to find work over the last 12 months amid a contraction that has led to unstable production and employment levels across the entertainment industry. The so-called peak TV era that enabled 599 original scripted series. It was 599, not 600.
Oh, I'm sorry. My averaging was off.
To land in a single year is over, likely never to return. Film, television, commercials, and other production activities in the first quarter of 2024 was 20.5% lower than the 5 average, according to Film LA. Globally, film and television productions lagged by 7% in the first quarter compared to the same period last year. We're not seeing this V-shaped recovery in writer employment, said Patrick Adler, principal at Westwood Economics and Planning. So the idea was, before the strike, you were up here. During the strike, it went down, and then what should have happened is this eventual creep up. But I believe
they didn't read the MBA.
That's not happening. That's what you're saying.
No, because they didn't read the MBA. I read it. I knew exactly what was going to happen when they did this. It's not going to be a V. It's going to be like my logo here. I'll show. It's going to be like that. You're going to have. We had the peak. We're at the decline, but you see the little bit at the end.
Hold on, let me.
The D that comes up. That's where writers should be and always should be. Toward that little rise at the end before it flatlines again. That is where writers should be. Because what we had is an inflation of terrible writers, which is the peak between the S and the D of my logo. And then now we're getting them all purged out, which is at the bottom point of my logo. And now we're slowly rising up to a more stable land, because that is, that's where it always should have been. We've inflated our writing staff based on inappropriate metrics. Mm-hmm. And the MBA has basically said, oh, we acknowledge that. We acknowledge that we have way more writers than we actually need. And we also acknowledge that way too many of them are terrible and should not have been in the business for the first place. So we're going to put in some stipulations to protect our industry from these types of people. So yes, if you want to be a diversity hire or whatnot, you still have to be a good writer first. And that's what they've done. And the fact that they're complaining to the trades is great, because that's telling me that it worked.
So this is a question I haven't asked you, but regarding the WJ strike, in your opinion, who won? Because
I did.
Feels like this pretty clear. You did.
I did, and writers like me won, because here's the thing. So since the strange event that happened in 2016, work for me has been in a massive decline. I mean, I would still get meetings. I would never be told directly why things wouldn't be moving forward and whatnot. But it just was like that. And I noticed it with other colleagues, people who are much more better writers and talent than I am, also in the same situation. Then the writer's strike happened. I saw the MBA. I'm like, this is actually a really good deal. I've never seen anything like this before. I'm surprised. It goes into effect. Then in November, I start getting emails and texts from people that have not talked to me in like 7 years. And then just this past winter, I got an option for a screenplay that was so bad and was trying to take advantage of me. I knew Hollywood was actually repairing itself, because I couldn't even get that far before this MBA strike. So the fact that I've got skeevy producers reaching out to me to try and essentially steal my work for very low pay means that Hollywood is actually on the mend. And it's going to be a long time before it gets back to normal. But the fact that they're going after a guy like me, a straight white man who happens to have a background in sci-fi and genre entertainment, and not going after, person like what's being interviewed in this article, shows that, they're like sick and tired of not making money. And they're going for people that they know can actually make the money, that can actually do stuff. That is the best sign that you can have. Like, not everybody is getting those opportunities. It's bleeding out. Like, they're testing the waters, so to speak, right now, the studio system. And it's going to be a long time before it kind of resets. In fact, I think we'll probably have the WJ contract will have to be renewed again before we start seeing a change in that case. And guess what? A lot of those members are probably going to want to go on strike because they're not getting work. And the WJ union right now, with the current people that I'm aware of that in there, are not going to propose a strike motion for that reason.
Well, they may not be working to the point that they're not going to be paying their dues, and they may be out of the union by then.
Yeah, well, I mean, the union is kind of a mixed up aspect, because even though I didn't make my units during the pandemic and whatnot, I'm technically a member, but not a member even though I was like an associate member. It was really complicated, and the fact that I'm a Canadian citizen just further complicated itself. But I still get access to a lot of WJ things. Regardless, this was I don't know who exactly orchestrated it. Some suspect it's Ellen Strutzman over at the WJ, who's just was promoted to the newer higher position. But somehow they maneuvered literally we need to clean out the fridge of our union and our staff, and everything that's rotted and not working is gone, and all the vegan stuff is going out too, because it doesn't actually nurture us, and the soy is gone, and we're just getting the meat and potatoes back in.
You gotta get that meat back
in the fridge so that we have our nutrients and that can actually like feed ourselves. So yeah, I mean, I've never expected that to happen. Not in a place like California with those extreme politics and whatnot, but they did it. And whether it sticks or not, it will depend over the next couple of years. I think next year we're going to probably see we're going to see less television shows, but they might be of a slightly higher quality. And if they can hook an audience, we will grow from there. Because it's all right now about just getting ad revenue in to support the rest of the industry, which the studios, not the writers, not producers or directors, the studios nearly killed television and streaming in one go.
Well, I mean, ironically, what are people watching? Old, good television shows.
Exactly.
All right. So the slowdown did not originate with the work stoppage of 2023. Writers and other entertainment workers began noticing a decline in employment opportunities long before the strike. Following the so-called streaming wars, when companies spent exorbitant amounts of money to direct-to-digital content to compete with Netflix, studios dramatically slowed their pace. The television networks have been purchasing far fewer shows, and only from big names, says Jess Meyer, known for The Flight Attendant. You need cachet to even sell. The studio cost-cutting strategy has left writers in a pinch. As a viewer, what is there to watch? Well, there's a lot.
599 shows, apparently.
How can they make nothing? Even producers saying, let's wait until the right moment. I don't know what that means. So not to go through this rest of this, but what it seems like studios are doing is they are slowing down and letting the revenue of the work they've already produced kind of flow in before they really start putting on the gas and start making new content. Does that sound right?
They're trying to gauge how much money are they making with what they have right now, and then what do they need to change to make more, and how are they going to enact that change? It's actually a surprisingly responsible approach to it. Yes, it's going to hurt some writers that can't get work, but if they do it well, which is again a crapshoot at this point, it means more work in the future. So you just have to weather it.
Well, it also helps that they can now get writers at a lower price, and if the show takes off and makes more money, then they can take money off of that end of things to pay the writers more.
Well, the thing is, like, the budgeting is kind of is stable, which means that if I got staffed on a show, I'd be making a very good living on that show. I'd even be making more of a good living if it performs very well because of the residual based stipulation. The studios would also be making a lot of money too. The question being is, like, are the studios going to go back to a 22 episode season, which is what the writers want? Or are they going to still do these miniseries with the 6 episodes, 8 episodes, 9 episodes, straight to order type of thing, and then you're out of a job until you find another one? And so that's like 3 or 4 months of work, and then you're back hustling again. The whole idea with the NBA is, like, we want to make those miniseries too expensive for the studios so that we get to the more stable 22 episode season order show. It was literally saying something that had been not in writing since television began, but was always assumed this was the model, and saying, no, we're putting this model in writing now. They use the smartest tactic either, which is like, oh, you want to do a 6 episode streaming series? Well, it's going to be really expensive, but it was to be cheaper if we did 22 episodes. And obviously the producers are going to be like, well, we're going to go with the cheaper option. And then that's what you do. And that's how you game the system. And again, like, I think that's a good sign. That's the right direction to go. Whether Hollywood nails it, again.
Yeah, or whether they're willing to be that patient. I mean, one of the things we said about the 22 episode season was when Kenobi came out. It was 8 episodes all written at the same time versus a 22 episode season where you write a few episodes and you can gauge the quality and the audience acceptance of that show, and and you're allowed to tweak over the 22 episodes, tweak it so that the show in effect should become progressively better by the time you get to the end, which was the problem with
you have your first 13 to gauge the audience. You figure out what they like. And then as the data starts coming in, before you go to camera with your subsequent following 9 episodes, you then make the adjustments to fit into that audience demographic. Oh, people really like this character that only appeared in 1 episode in that first 13 episodes. Can we bring that character back for a couple of episodes here, see if that still works? And if it does, great. We've got a new actor and a new cast member on the show that's going to bring in audiences and allow us to keep working. You don't get that when you shoot a show before you air it.
We talked about like She-Hulk was the great example of that, because you had potential in those first 3 episodes, especially with the character of Madison. But Madison appeared in 2 episodes and was gone, and the best character in that whole show is now gone, and no one knew how great that character was. Also, you realized how bad the comedy was, and the fact that if you made certain tweaks, you could have actually stuck the landing with She-Hulk.
It pains me because I've read every She-Hulk from its first issue to the end of the John Byrne run, and then there's rumors that Taylor Swift is going to be the blonde bombshell, which is her name is she's actually, as an old woman, Jessica Walters' assistant in those John Byrne things, and she teaches Jessica Walters how to break the fourth wall. And I'm like, if they did that in She-Hulk series TV show, it would have been fantastic. It would have worked, but I don't know what direction they went. They went a crazy direction. The fact that I wish I was able to write that show, because you guys would have loved it.
We were talking because the writer of Megan, the killer doll movie, black female, and I'm like, that would have been perfect for She-Hulk. To kind of bring that sensibility to it, the comedy and the horror. You feel like at least there's someone talented enough who could have gone into that show and checked off a lot of boxes at the same time.
And Megan did well because the woman who wrote it knew how to write it. The director knew how to nail it. I think the weakest part was the adult, played by what's her name?
Was it Maya Hawke, or was it?
Yeah, I think it was Maya Hawke. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, listen, the people that fit those demographics, there are writers that are out there. They're not at the level that they need them to be yet, but they're a good start. So don't drag them ahead to the finish line before they're ready, because then you're just going to ruin the very person you're trying to promote. Like, just get them in one step at a time. I had a great friend who's a black guy. He got it. We were up for the same job up in Toronto. He got it. He found out he got it because he's black. He was really upset by that. They would never listen to him. They'd never take his, he had an authority, in air quotes. And he eventually just quit because he's like, I was only there to be a trophy for the executives. And he's
the
like,
token.
And here's the thing. He was a better writer than me, and he's actually quit the writing industry altogether. He's doing customer service or something now. It's a shame, but that's what the institutions did and they've probably been doing it to several dozen, or if not hundreds, of other writers as well. Horrifying.
Yeah. All right. Another studio source who was not authorized to comment said the pullback was necessary because the TV production boom was simply unsustainable. Factors such as rising production costs, the lack of competitive film and television credits in California, and a shrinking ad revenue certainly plays into that. But the contraction is a return to normal more than anything else. Also, what wasn't there was COVID consultants as well as DEI consultants, which I'm sure the more and more I look at these DEI consultants, the more I believe it. They're all grifts.
Yes,
they're all people. Their jobs exist solely to find things wrong, and by God, they're going to find something if it kills them.